We are very excited to have Michael here for the second part of the webinar. We will see what he can teach us today. We will have a few interactive parts again. So if you want to prepare something to write, this would be great. Otherwise, just do it in your head. That's cool too. Holisticon is a management and IT consultancy based in Germany. We have an office, the main office in Hamburg, another one in Hanover. And if you have any questions regarding Holisticon, our colleagues have the Holisticon in their name, so you can chat with us or just add on LinkedIn or Xing or whatever you're using. And we are happy to tell you a little bit more about our company. Without much further ado, I will hand over to Marit or Michael. Who wants to go first? Marit first as a moderator?
I go first, yeah. Thank you, Christian. Well, I'll be a moderator today. I'm Marit, also working at Holisticon as an Agile coach. And I'm very happy to introduce Michael today for everyone who doesn't know who Michael is, who's here for the first time. He's an experienced Agile coach and really an expert in the field of leadership agility. He's also the founder of the Agile Leadership Institute, or co-founder of the Agile Leadership Institute, and the author of the book Evolve Agility: Growing an Agile Leadership Culture from the Inside Out. So if you want to know more about that, get more background on that, you can read the book. And in this book, he shares his vast experience on Agile coaching and on his coaching of managers, leaders, and Agile coaches. And in the chat, I posted the agenda for today. And so we don't lose time, I'll just hand over to Michael, and to all of you, have fun today.
Thank you, Marit. I want to start off by just calling attention to that phrase, lose time. And we have certain phrases, and incidentally, those of you whose native language is not English, thank you for being willing to be in this conversation in my language, my mother language. But we do have these language usages, and we often say that we use language, and I'd like to suggest, to kick things off, that more than us using language, language uses us in ways that we're going to start to look at a bit today. So what I want to do is I'm going to, I'm always, I generally don't like to show slides in webinars. And here's the thing, it's easier for people sometimes to follow, especially when there's a language, when there are different language differences. So I've taken to start using some slides, and here's how the session will go today. So I'll be speaking for a little while, and then you guys will be in small breakout groups, and Marit will take you through how that will happen once we get there. Then we'll come back, and I'm going to be interacting with you, and in relation to the work that you did in your breakout groups. And then we may have a second breakout group, and then we'll conclude with just kind of like open questions. All right. So as I talk through the stuff I'm about to talk through, I want you to take it personally, like not theoretically. So this kind of work only works when we understand it within the context of our own lives, of our own selves. And so I invite you to really take it that way. Okay, good. So I want to start off by, I'm going to share my screen. Give me a second to manage that. Marit, how are we doing? Are you able to see my screen? Okay, awesome, great.
Yes, able to see it.
Great. Okay, so we're just going to move things around, and what I want to do is I want to start with a review. So those of you who weren't here last time, just going to quickly review kind of the high points of what we did last week. And so The two of the main ideas, or two big ideas that we investigated last week or explored, and one of them is the idea of leadership as an everywhere phenomenon. Typically, we think of leadership specifically as that which takes place in a role. And it's just, again, it's one of these ways in which language uses us. And increasingly, I'm finding myself not even wanting to use the word leadership, but there's certain things that we get with the word leadership. So I want us to start, first of all, to think about leadership as an everywhere phenomenon, not just that which happens at the top. And as an everywhere phenomenon, I want to distinguish a small L leadership versus large L leadership. By the way, I'm kind of rushing through this right now as a review. If there are some things that aren't clear and you are sufficiently curious, you can look at the video from the last session where I spend a bit more time with these things. So who is a leader? Small L leader. Well, first, it's anyone willing to take responsibility for the world and able to influence others in creating that world. So I didn't say that I am to blame for the ills of the world, but for instance, to take responsibility for what's happening right now. I mean, what would be possible for us in our own leadership, small L leadership, if we were to take responsibility for COVID-19? Now, I know that that's a quite a provocative thing to say. I didn't say take the blame, but like take responsibility as in, I look to see what can I bring to bring greater capability in the world around me. And that's what I mean by take responsibility. The second aspect of who is a leader is anyone who is guided by a deep inner compass, a kind of sense of personal purpose, like something that gets us up in the morning in terms of what it is we're up to in the world. So as opposed to just kind of going mechanically through our lives and our work, that we're oriented around a deep inner compass. A leader is also anyone who is willing to recognize and evolve beyond their own inner limitations, to notice when there's a gap between how we're being in any moment and the outcome that we're creating. And we almost will always see a gap. And so being willing to stand in that gap and to take on being able to evolve beyond the limitations inside that gap. Okay, so this is how I understand leadership within the context of this work that we're doing in this webinar series. All right. Now, this doesn't mean that there isn't a role for an organizational leader. All right. So an organizational leader, a leader who has an organizational role as a leader or manager, which I refer to as big L leadership, is someone whose job is to grow other leaders. It's not the only thing that their job is, but that's a big part of their job. Now, we kind of skipped over an important point here. We're talking about leadership agility in a Vuca world. And for those of you not familiar with the term Vuca, Vuca is an acronym from the US Army. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And it's a character of the world that we live in. And COVID-19 just simply reminds us how much we really live in a Vuca world. Which brings me to the second point. Again, we're just reviewing here. That when we talk about leadership in the way that I'm talking about it here, we're talking about making a shift in our own way of making sense from a predict and plan orientation to a sense and respond orientation. And by predict and plan, what I mean is it's a kind of inner assumption. Again, it's kind of like the language use that says, so we don't run out of time. It's the way that language uses us, this orientation, this expectation of predict and plan uses us. And it's an expectation that we can predict the world, we can predict what's going to happen, and on the basis of that prediction, make plans. And we get upset when things don't turn out the way that we expect. Now, remember, I said at the beginning, I asked you to start to look at this for yourself. This is not a theoretical conversation. This is a very personal, very practical conversation. So we're talking about a shift from relying on the idea, on the expectation that we can predict the world, a shift from that kind of relying on to an expectation that things are not predictable, that the world shows up in real time, and the way the world shows up isn't always the way we expect it to. And this is what I refer to as sense and respond orientation. As a sense and respond orientation, we kind of expect that things aren't always going to go as planned, and we're able to dance with the moment. All right, so that's now, when I talk about sense and respond, I'm not saying that we don't ever make plans. Some people want to turn this into an either-or conversation. It's both and, right? We're not saying ditch making predictions. We're not saying ditch making plans. What we are saying is to recognize that our predictions and plans are always up for grabs, to use an English phrase. All right. Good. So far, so good. Okay. That's pretty much where we landed last time, with a few flourishes and elaborations. Okay. So now we're going to proceed. So so we're talking about leadership agility, and I want to identify 3 different territories in which our leadership shows up, or in which we pay attention to our leadership. And the first of these territories is the territory of self, what I call the territory of self, which is my own inner sense making, my own capacity for sense making. It's in this territory that we're going to do a deep dive in this session today. All right. The second territory, which in a sense builds on the inner capacity that I build within the territory of self, is the territory of relationship. In a Vuca world, our capacity, our competence, our skillfulness in the area of relationship is far more important, is far more critical than in the old sort of pre-Vuca world, if such a thing ever really existed. Let's just presume that it did, right? But relationship becomes really important, and that's going to be the topic into which we dive next session. All right. And then the third territory going out, you can see that it goes out, right? The third territory is system, which is any social system in which we wish to have leaderful impact. So it could be a team, it could even be another person, and it can change from moment to moment. It could be an entire enterprise. So a system is something which is beyond myself and beyond typically just a one-on-one relationship. And you can see that system builds both on our capacity for self and our capacity for relationship agility. Okay, so let's dive into this first one. So it's really weird not to be able to see everybody, but I'll be with you in a little while. Okay, so I want to invoke for ourselves a kind of metaphor, a metaphor of an operating system. And we know what an operating system is, and we kind of don't, right? We know that an operating system on our phone is that thing that reminds us that we need to upgrade it. And I tend to click, no, wait, because I don't want to have my, iPhone experience get upset by a new operating system. But at some point, I upgrade that operating system. And the reason we upgrade the operating system is so that the apps that we run on that operating system can run in an orderly and effective way. If I had never upgraded my operating system since I first got my phone, chances are some of the apps would no longer run. They would no longer work because those apps get upgraded. So here's, yep. I'm sorry? Oh, you're not seeing. Oh, well, now I'm a bit, I'm having a Vuca moment. I'm seeing something that says an inner operating system. You're not seeing that? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right, let's try that. And then if that fails us, then we'll just ditch the slides. Okay. Okay. All right. Let me stop sharing. And I'll share, and I'll try this one more time, and then we'll just ditch the slides if this doesn't work. Okay, now are you seeing something that says operating system now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you for interrupting. That was a good move. It's a little bit like it's like trying to interrupt a boulder rolling down a mountain. Okay, good. So, all right, so I want to invoke this metaphor of an operating system for ourselves. And just as an iPhone, in order to run the newer apps that we're being asked to run on our iPhone or that we want to run, we occasionally have to upgrade the operating system on which those apps run. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to run. And we as human beings are kind of similar. If we take into account the sorts of behaviors and actions that we take in the world, and if in a VUCA world we're being asked to behave and act in a different way, one which is more congruent with the sense and respond, chances are we're gonna need at various points to upgrade that inner operating system. And so let's take a look at the anatomy of that operating system. All right. So are you seeing something that says application layer, Sebastian?
Yes, it works now.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, good. So we're taking apart the inner operating system of each of us. Incidentally, I'm using this metaphor. I'm not suggesting that we are an operating system. I'm just using this as a metaphor to help us have some access to what I'm calling the human or psychological technology behind the work that we're doing in this area of leadership. So there's this application layer, and the application layer consists of our behaviors and actions. The things, in other words, the things that we do. So throughout the course of the day, we take countless number of actions. We behave in this way, right? Sometimes we yell at somebody. Sometimes we hug somebody. Sometimes we take decisive action. Sometimes we're more hesitant. And so our day-to-day life is constituted by the things that we do, the apps that we run. All right. Now, underneath, so we can think of that as in terms of our outer agility. Since we're having a conversation here around leadership agility, we can think of this as our outer agility, our ability, the capacity to have our behaviors and actions be in a dance with what shows up, and be able to adjust to what's happening. All right. Now, underneath that is the operating system layer within us. And let's take that apart. So at the topmost level of that operating system layer are our skills and competencies, the things that we are able to do, the things that we can do. So for instance, I might have a certain degree of skillfulness in the area of conversation, of relationship. And I have not so much skillfulness in the area of working on an automobile engine, right? That's not something I can do. I have pretty much zero skillfulness in that area. Now, when we talk about being able to operate, to be leaderful in a Vuca world, there are certain things that we're going to need to be able to do, certain competencies and skills. And we can learn those things, but here's the catch. And check this out for yourself and check this out for your experience. Oftentimes, we will endeavor to learn certain skills and we hit a certain ceiling. We get better and better and better, and we hit a certain ceiling. And that ceiling is determined by where we're going next, which is what you could think of as the deep kernel layer, what I'm going to call the hidden layer. And I want to unpack that because it's this layer that ultimately determines what we can do, how skillful we can be in the area of relationship. So I want to unpack this, and we're going to spend some time, actually pretty much the entire time, in this hidden layer. Okay, good. So the hidden layer consists of, you can say that they consist of 4 aspects of our own inner sense making, our own inner meaning making. All right. Now continue to look at this for yourself. So, and incidentally, there are certain kind of shortcuts that I'm taking here in order to be able to pack this into a short amount of time. So the first aspect, the first inner kernel phenomenon that happens is in the area of our beliefs. Now, I'm not talking about the beliefs we know that we have. So for instance, I believe in open communication. That's my belief. That's an espoused belief. And it's a really good belief, isn't it? Probably many of you have a similar belief. I'm not talking about the beliefs we have. I'm talking about the beliefs which have us. So for instance, while I may say that I believe in open communication, there are certain situations where what I really believe is that I better keep my trap shut. Because if I say what I think in this moment, I might get in trouble. So there's a set of beliefs which have us, which for the most part we're unaware of, and they determine our actions. They determine what we can do, and they determine what we do. All right. The other thing here is assumptions, which is similar to beliefs. The assumptions has to do with what I think is true about the given moment. So I assume that Moret will say something if something goes haywire with the screen again, right? And we make assumptions all the time. And the thing is that we're not the ones necessarily making them. They're getting made in us. It's like a machine. And they're conditioned. And for the most part, we're unaware that we're making them. And yet they also drive what we do and what we can do. The third element here is the theories that we have. So we have certain theories about how people are, how I am, how my wife is. I have certain theories about how my wife is. I have certain theories about how Moret is. I have certain theories about how Germans are. I have certain theories about how Americans are. And we have theories for everything. And again, they're not theories that we have. They're theories that, for the most part, to the degree that we are unconscious of them, they have us. And they're literally in the background determining our actions, our behaviors, our skillfulness, our competencies. And finally, there are emotional triggers. The things that trigger us. Like, for instance, when Moret came in and said that we could no longer see the screen, what I was present with immediately was one of my own triggers. By the way, we have patterns of triggers, and one pattern of trigger that I have is that when something goes wrong technologically, I tend to freak out. It's literally, it hits the amygdala. The amygdala thinks that we're threatened. It floods the body with chemicals, and all of that happens within a millisecond or a microsecond. And before we know it, we're off to the races reacting to our triggers. Okay, so, and all of that is how we make sense, or really how sense makes us. Sometimes I refer to all of these elements as our own inner sense making. The sense making that at any given moment by moment, second by second, millisecond by millisecond, is making us. I refer to this dimension, this part of ourselves, as our inner agility. And how sense makes us determines what we can do, which determines what we do. And in a like fashion, our capacity for inner agility determines our capacity for outer agility. All right, so I want to give us a handle on this. All right, so you can say, by the way, I'm not saying any of this what I'm about to say is necessarily true, but it's a way of thinking about something. All right, so you can say that the inner sense-making kernel has three fundamental qualities. The first quality has to do with the belief. And a fundamental belief that we as human beings, particularly in our Western, stay with this, I know this gets a little bit dense, but you're going to do some work with this in just a moment. So, the fundamental belief that drives much of how sense-making makes us is the belief in is. She is that way. He is that way. I am the way that I am. This situation is the way that it is. Those people in that in that part of the organization are the way that they are. And it's this fundamental belief that things is the way they is that can trip us up. So that's one territory in which the inner sense making that makes us can limit our capacity for effective behavior and performance and action. Okay? The second one is theory. In the territory of theory, the predominant theory that drives most, if not all, of our theories is the belief in causality. I'm tired because I didn't get enough sleep last night. I'm stressed out because I've had a long day. I'm angry because you said this, that thing that you said. I'm frustrated because the thing that I was hoping to receive via email from you, you haven't sent, and so I'm frustrated with you. Can you see how much all of this works in the background and determines how we think, how we behave, how we act? And then the final sort of element here is trigger. And whenever we are triggered emotionally, by the way, keep checking this out for yourself, and in a moment you're actually going to do so explicitly. Whenever we are emotionally triggered, one of the first thoughts that come up for us is, it should not be this way. Wow, that damn screen didn't update. This software should not be this way. So for us as human beings, these are fundamental qualities that determine the nature of our own inner sense making. So what I want to do now, Moret, is I want to invite people, first of all, are there any questions just in terms of understanding the basic words that I said? Never mind whether or not you understand the concepts, because you're going to do a little bit of work in just a moment.
In the chat, we don't have a question, but an interesting thought by Jan, thinking about how belief works in languages without the concept of the verb to be.
Well, yeah, so, okay, so that gets into something a little deep, Jan. If this is the Jan who I think I know, hello, and we'll come back to that later. Actually, it's an evocative idea that that I'd like to explore, but maybe not now. Okay. So far we have so far people basically understand the words that have been coming out of my mouth. Okay, good. All right, good. So now, what I'm going to invite people to do is, and Maret will kind of take us through the mechanics of this, is you're going to take a moment or two to jot down where in your life, or actually to make it more specific, where in a recent moment in your life has your belief in is, your theory of because, or the trigger, it shouldn't be this way, where has this happened and what has been the impact? So for instance, like just a moment ago, when actually even before we got on this call, I was having trouble getting onto Zoom. And I was getting a little bit, not quite frantic, but a little anxious, right? And because the predict and plan in me wants things to go according to plan, and the plan was we were supposed to get on 15 minutes before the call, and here it is 5 minutes before the session starts, and I'm still not in Zoom. So so I got triggered. It should not be this way. And then what happened is I started to kind of spin out. Zoom shouldn't be this way. Software shouldn't be this way. Things should be easier, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And I got distracted. Now, luckily I was able to kind of recover, but sometimes I'm not able to do that, or not able to do that quickly enough. So take a moment and look for yourself. Where has your belief in is? She is this way. That situation sucks. He really doesn't get it. Or because I'm tired because I didn't get enough sleep. So look to see where these sorts of things operate in your life, maybe one or two examples. And then after a moment of solo work, you'll be in groups to have a conversation. So far, so good? Awesome. Okay, so Maret, what are we going to do?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I will guide you through the process. So first, you will have some time to reflect upon the question alone. I will post the question in the chat. Just a second, so that you can actually have a look at it. I hope I got it right, Michael. I hope I got the point of your question. So like, where did like the belief in is the theory or trigger occur in a recent moment? And you have 1 minute to think of specific examples, and then we'll have a conversation cafe about it in groups of 5, where you can exchange your experiences and thoughts on that, and experience your examples. I put the structure in the chat. You'll be in groups of 5, and you'll have 2 rounds of 5 minutes each, and it helps a lot if you keep the time per person limited to 1 minute, but you can just look for yourself. So you'll have a time display in the breakout room too. You can look at the time display and organize for yourselves. And what is most important is that only one person at a time should speak. So in the first round, one person starts, then next person, and so on, just one by one. And then in the second round, you share what your thoughts are after you've heard everyone's thoughts. But first, you reflect upon your thoughts alone, and I will give you now 1 minute for this. But before, I have to ask I ask if there are any questions on that. Is it clear for you how we will go on now? Sifting through the participants, but I don't see any objection. Okay, I see a thumb. Perfect. Then I will start the time 1 minute, and after 1 minute, Christian will guide you into the breakout rooms. I will give you a sign when the minute is over.
Now, Maret, I have a question. Can people see this slide when they're in the breakout rooms?
No, that's why I can put it in the chat if
Okay.
it's convenient for you and all the participants. So I will put it in the chat then.
So then
Or
I'll stop. I may as well stop.
Christian, can you put it in the chat? Barbara also wrote she can, if whoever wants can take a screenshot, and maybe Christian can put the content of the slide also in the chat. Okay, so I will start time and give you a sign when the minute is over. Okay, please come to an end, finish your thought, finish your sentence, finish your word. And then you are prepared for the upcoming discussion and dialogue in the breakout rooms. And actually we will have groups of 4. So
Hold on just a second. I just want to come in. So I just want to remind people to reflect on this in your own life, as opposed to having a theoretical conversation. Not that there's something wrong with the latter, but it would be more useful if you use this to reflect in your own life.
Yeah, so we hope you found specific examples from recent moments in your life, and now you have the time to share them in the breakout rooms. And remember, you'll have 10 minutes in total, and you can see the time display in the breakout rooms, which will help you. And we will get you back. Then we will give you a prompt when the time is running out, or when we have to get back. So have fun. I wish you an insightful discussion. Welcome back, everybody. We hope everything went well and that you had inspiring conversations about the question and your examples and thoughts.
Welcome back, everybody. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to hear from maybe a couple or a few of you. What did you learn in the work that you just now did? In terms of looking at the where it is that you your sense making determines that somebody or something is a certain way, or there is a kind of a because, or when you're triggered, there's this thing that happens where it shouldn't be this way. So who would like to share? And what'll happen is I'll interact with you a bit.
I would go.
Oh, hi, Barbara.
Hi. I think what was a very interesting outcome for myself in hearing the stories of my colleagues in the chat, it gave me a lot of positive feeling and lifted my energy. So this is something I would like to share. And we had the discussion of Corona or COVID-19. So what the changes have been and how everything is changed now. And due to the massive change, we agreed, I think mostly all, we hope that it will continue to stay a little bit like this on working online and things like this.
Mm-hmm. So good. So can I work with you a little bit on that?
A little bit.
Yeah. So I'd like to suggest that implicit in that there is an is, and so I'm going to be a bit provocative here, that for us, COVID-19 is a certain way. And what is that for you, Barbara?
COVID-19 is for myself that we people don't have the power. As nature is stronger than us. Yeah.
Right. And that's something that occurs for you as inherently true.
Yes.
Right. And so now I'd like to suggest that that is not necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I'm speaking to Barbara, but I'm also speaking to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
That whatever it is that we say that this certain situation is, it may not necessarily be that way. And to the degree to which we are, so I'm going to say this in a really strange way, to the degree that we are, that COVID is the way that it is, we limit the possibilities for ourselves. What does that bring to mind for you, Barbara?
What comes in my mind, I don't know if this is the right answer, but what comes in my mind is that companies or a lot of people are working on the, how you call it, the medicine to cut it down again, or I don't know I don't know how you call it in English. So that's what comes to my mind, but I don't know if this is the right answer. But this is when my first saying that nature is stronger than us, we have on the opposite, we have people working on the medicine to bring it down again.
Okay, so I'd like to, I want to offer the suggestion that to the degree that we believe something is the way that it is, we are limited in our capacity for agility, for leadership agility. So I want to open that up to somebody else. So let's bring somebody else into this fold here. I recognize that what I'm suggesting here may seem provocative or controversial, and that's okay. So who else wants to come in? Thank you, Barbara.
Uh-huh.
So who else wants to come in on this? And if you're raising your hand, I may not be able to see you because there are a couple of screens here. Yes, Visby.
Michael, Visby, I'll come in, yeah.
Yes. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So come on in. What do you want to bring in, Visby?
Well, one of my realizations was, as you said, around whatever is going on, it does come back to some kind of fundamental belief or assumption that I hold. And it might be a belief that I might have just adopted from the society around me.
Yeah. And what would you say that belief is? How would you speak that?
I mean, one belief, for example, is that, death is something we should avoid or try and avoid at all costs.
That death is something that we should avoid at all costs. How many, so raise your hand if that's kind of a belief. Maybe it's not like even something you necessarily think about, but it's there kind of in the background. Like, is it like, yeah, well, of course. Raise your hand. More of you should be raising your hand if you're being honest. I mean, I know that I do, and I've been around death. And so it's like I actually have some practice in being around death. And it is fundamental to us as human beings that death is something to be avoided. Now, we might, say that, we might espouse the belief, well, death is a natural part of life, it's, we should embrace it and all of that kind of stuff. And there's what we really believe when we're walking through the woods and a bear steps into the path. Now I'm going to ask you, what do you believe, or what's the belief that holds you in relation to death? And I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad thing, right? In fact, quite to the contrary. The whole point here is that to the degree that we can become aware of the beliefs, assumptions, theories, and triggers that are operating in us, to the degree we can be aware of them, we then have some capacity for choice in a given moment. So to the degree that I'm aware that when something breaks down in technology around me, I get triggered, I have a little more choice in being able to manage that trigger when it shows up. If I'm completely unaware of that trigger happening in me, then what happens is I get triggered, and my behavior, action, everything is determined by that trigger, and I have no choice in the moment. Raise your hand if you can relate to what we're saying here. Like it's making sense. You can see in your own life. So thank you, Vispi. That's awesome. So somebody else come in this conversation with whatever is there for you in this conversation. Please don't be bashful.
I don't see any hands.
Doesn't mean, oh, here we are. Zvone, hello.
Hi,
Good
Michael.
to see you.
Good to see you too. Well, for me, it was, I was just thinking about how many small things I have. Because I believe, for example, in some things that are, in my work as an agile coach, I am noticing myself trapping very often in, I would even say, like a trap of knowing the right thing for other teams, people, how they should behave and how they should show that they have a certain, or that they should reach a certain mastery in agility, let's say like this. And what I notice is that that through my belief in these things, I am limiting myself to observe this from another perspective. And this is what limits my possibilities or my options in moments that I have with this team. And usually I notice this, or I remember this after the fact. After the thing happened, I said to myself, oh, this happened again. Yeah. I missed the opportunity to talk about something different.
Yes, yes. So thank you, Zvone. That's a really great example, and I just want to kind of like unpack it a little bit for myself. So what you're pointing to is the kind of the building quality of our beliefs and assumptions. So for instance, we may have a certain belief that this team is a certain way. There's that is happening. This team is this way. And I might have a theory they are this way because, and whatever theory I have, right? And all of that's happening in the background. It determines moment by moment, and it literally determines not just what I think, but it determines what I see. So many of you have probably seen that gorilla video where you're asked to watch this video of two basketball teams, and you're asked to follow how many times a ball gets passed between the basketball team wearing the black shirts. And you count it and, you know, oh, 17 or whatever it is, right? And then you're asked, how many of you noticed there was a person in a gorilla outfit dancing amongst everybody? Didn't notice that, right? The beliefs that determine us, the beliefs operating in the background in that kernel operating system, the theories, the things that trigger us, and the tactics that we have to avoid getting triggered. Here's that thing about to happen. I'm gonna take this tactic. I'm not gonna say this thing. I'm not gonna do this thing, or I'm going to be very hesitant, or I'm going to be very abstract in my speaking. All of our behavior, all of our perceptions gets determined by that, and the world shows up in the clearing of all of that. And we don't see the gorilla. Or we see something, and what we see is a tiger in the room. There's no tiger in the room, but how we relate, how we automatically come to be in a situation is that there is a tiger in the room, even though there's no tiger in the room. Meanwhile, we fail to see the gorilla that's actually in the room, right?
Thank you.
So to your point, Zvone, so you notice that happening after the fact. But by the way, this happens to me all the time. I notice it after the fact. And here's the thing that can happen with awareness, is to the degree that we are aware of these things, that we even notice it after the fact, the name of the game is to be able to shrink the duration of time it takes before we notice it. And as we shrink that amount of time, we become better able to deal with something. Like if maybe it's 5 minutes later and I just made a mess with somebody, I can go back to that person and say 5 minutes later, wow, I really apologize. I said this thing, or I reacted to you in a certain way that wasn't very helpful. And I just want to acknowledge that. And it gives us leaderful capacity. So again, we're in a conversation for leadership agility, for everywhere leadership, being able to take responsibility for our world and to do it in the face of the unknown, right? So this is a fairly big game, and it impacts every moment of our life. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
I feel like I want to do just one more, and then we'll go to the next thing. Who else?
Jan is waving.
Yes, come on in, Jan. Hello.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Two things from the conversation that I had that came to my mind is that awareness of those triggers enables two things. One is to create positive momentum when those triggers or this inner kernel is challenged or shattered, as we have it in the current situation.
Yeah.
And the other one is to have a foundation to act on.
Yes.
When you're aware of this, where you are, what your beliefs are, what your assumptions are, that this is something you can kind of dance on.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for bringing that in, Jan. It's really, it's really important in this conversation, because in a Vuca world, see, what I'm not saying is to have zero stability, right? To have zero stability is just, it's not a good idea, you know? But what's the basis for the stability? And I'd like to suggest, I'd like you to consider that the basis for the stability is not something that comes from the outside or doesn't come from the outside, but that it's something that comes from the inside. And what I mean by that is that it comes from our own inner compass, our own sense of purpose. What is it that we're committed to? What's our vision? What's our mission in our life? And I don't mean something that you put on a placard someplace that's superficial. I mean, what is it that really matters to you? What is it? What is that which you stand for? And it's not like a predictable condition. So I can share with you what it is for me. What it is for me, what I stand for, the inner compass around which my life is oriented, is the possibility for the transformation of human consciousness. And so at any given moment, when something isn't going the way that I expect, I can rest back on that and allow that to inform how I might be in the moment. So I'm aware that I'm aware of the clock, and it says 8 minutes after the top of the hour. And so, Marek, can we do it like maybe just like a 6 or 7 minute breakout, just like a free form breakout?
That's what we actually intended to do now.
Good. So yeah, just and the question is, what do you make of this for yourself? And you might just take a moment or two to maybe collect your thoughts if you're somebody who works better that way. And then you'll be in groups for maybe just like 6 minutes or something. So we can come back together again and then just do final, roundup.
Yeah, we prepared the breakout rooms now for groups of 3, and you will have 6 minutes total for your group. And as just last time, you can prepare yourselves. You have 1 minute to prepare your thoughts, to finish your thoughts on that, gather, reflect on that. And I will take the time again. So is there any question before I start? Don't see any objections, so I start the minute and then I give you a sign when the minute is over, and then you get into the breakout rooms.
Well, so I just want to find out, so that's we have about 10 minutes left, and I want to just maybe open this up just to general questions or comments with people, and we'll take maybe about 15 minutes to do that before we close, or 8 minutes, something like that. So general question or comment. So here, actually, I just want to say very briefly that this is the kind of stuff that if we had more time, like if we were in a workshop environment, we would be diving much more deeply into these distinctions and how they fit in your own life. So, and having said that, what questions do you have? Comments or questions? Shaheen and then Frederica. Shaheen, come on in. Hello.
Hi, Michael. So my question is, it always pays off to think about our beliefs and then question them and then realize or be self-aware where we are coming from and how we are solving the issue at hand, or how you solve the challenge at hand. But we are, as you said, we are living in a world that, like, most of these things are built in ourselves, right? We are not questioning them, right? So how much, like, what is the return on investment for questioning or how much do we need to question our beliefs? Because then we can go into the spiral loop of questioning and questioning and questioning, right?
Yeah, good. So Shaheen, I'm going to be, again, a little bit provocative. I'd like to suggest that you ask, what's the nature of the belief that informs that question? Like, for instance, there seems to be a belief there that if we start to become more aware of our beliefs, that will that would take time, that we'd end up going into this sort of, there's a kind of a feeling of like going into a kind of a loop. And I'd like to suggest that may or may not be true. And what I'd like to suggest is that there's a belief there. And to the degree that we can just be aware of those beliefs, it's not something that necessarily takes time. And it's even not necessarily something that takes more of our attention such that we can't pay attention to the things that are important, quote unquote. What thoughts does that evoke in you?
Right. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but it triggered a thought in my mind that it might not even be a belief, but it might be a pattern that I have observed in myself, and it become a resistance or a belief that if I question myself, I'm going to get into this loop again and again and again.
That's right. Exactly.
So
You just saw something about yourself. You saw something about the inner mechanism or the mechanism of that inner operating system in yourself. And that's what we're talking about here, is to have so my bet is, Shaheen, is that as you go through the remainder of your day, that insight will color how other things show up for you. And that's the way that inner transformation happens. It's not the taking in of a concept that generates transformation. It's when something shifts in the way that we're looking at the world, which something just shifted for you, didn't it?
Yeah.
Cool.
I bet it would too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we have time for maybe one more question or comment. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Frederica. Sorry, I'm a little absent-minded sometimes.
Yeah, no worries.
Notice what I just said is about myself, by the way.
So during the session, I had the realization that I can only change my theories if I realize them, and then I can act upon them and change negative patterns towards the positive. But we are all usually in a very busy work environment where it's hard to find time to reflect upon the experience we have and to reflect upon the triggers we might have. I was just wondering if you know some kind of magic trick you can embed in your everyday life to find more of these triggers and to break behavioral patterns.
So you just now, you said that it can be hard to find the time. It's hard to find the time. So that is a belief I'd like to suggest. Okay. And it's not real. There's no such thing. Point to me in the world where hard to find the time exists. It exists nowhere else but in our speaking. And to start to become aware of what comes out of our mouth. Because here's the thing, what comes out of our mouth is what shapes reality for us, or the occurrence of reality. So I have a bad habit of saying, I'm really busy. And guess what shows up inside that as a result of that speaking is a certain kind of busyness. Now, this is not to say that we don't all have a lot of things on our plate, but the question is what is the nature of our relationship to those things? Are we being determined by a belief that, well, it just is the way that it is? It's super busy. I don't have time to stop and think. I'd like to suggest that you have plenty of time to stop and think. And it's that belief that keeps you in the trap of getting totally absorbed in the content of what we're doing. Now, if we had more time, if we had a couple more hours, we could spend some time unpacking these things. And so I just want to say very briefly that at some point in the summer, we're going to, I and folks at Holisticon, we're going to be creating something that will help us go more deeply into this stuff. So stay tuned on your radio dial, as we used to say in America. Okay, so I think we are at time, or actually we have just a couple minutes left. Any like last little question or tidbit you'd like to share? Anybody, before we kind of close? Actually, I have an idea. I'd like to hear from a number of you. We're going to close, and just like 1 or 2 words, I'm leaving this session with, and then whatever's there for you. Could be, feeling inspired, feeling puzzled. I'm leaving this session, whatever it is for you, in 1 or 2 words. We'd like to hear from as many of you as possible. And everyone go ahead and turn off your microphone. One of the things I don't like about microphones off is you can't feel the space. You can't feel the emotional field as easily when you're in a virtual environment. I mean, when you're in a real room, do people put themselves on mute? No. You hear people's breathe. You can feel people more. So I'm leaving this session with, or feeling, or whatever it is that's true for you, and just a couple words, 1 or 2 words, nothing long.
Okay, I can start.
Please. Yeah, go ahead, Annika.
I feel kind of enlightened from different perspectives.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, Annika.
I'm going to be busy with thinking about how can I focus on rather the positive aspects of the things and not the negative things that's happening around me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I will leave this call feeling 2 things: relieved and frustrated.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm leaving the call with a gratitude, Michael, for this thought about the language and how important it is.
Thank you.
I'm leaving this session with awareness.
I didn't quite catch that, Naresh.
We couldn't hear you. You're very
Sorry.
quiet.
I said I'm living this session with more awareness.
Yeah, I'm leaving this session with a lot to think about, and also, of course, plenty of time to do so.
I leave this session with my feelings are okay sometimes, but I shouldn't spend too much time on it if it doesn't nurture myself.
Thank you, Barbara.
I'm leaving this session with more confidence and a lot of more inspiration.
Thank you.
I'm leaving this session with more self-awareness.
Thank you.
And I leave this session being aware how language can impact me.
Thank you.
I'm leaving this session with a greater sense of personal responsibility.
I'll be leaving in need of a koan session.
Of a what session?
Koan? Zen koans? Those things that are sentences that are not real.
Oh, koan. Koan. Yes, thank you. Looks like you were going to come in a moment ago. Okay, so we are at our time. We're 1 minute past. Thank you. We'll be doing this again next Tuesday. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Well, hope to see at least some of you there next week, and we'll be diving into the territory of relationship. So continuing the same conversation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Michael, for taking your time for us. And also thank you all for being so open.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.